Hey there, and welcome to another deep dive.
This time we're tackling a real titan of personal development,
Okay.
the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right, you might be thinking,
Yeah,
isn't this just another business book?
sure.
But trust me.
This one goes way beyond just climbing the corporate ladder.
Okay.
We're talking universal principles for effectiveness that apply whether you're leading a team,
Right.
raising a family.
Or just trying to level up your own life.
Absolutely. And the beauty of Covey's work is that it all comes back to character. He argues that lasting success isn't about tricks or techniques. It's about building a solid foundation of character, what he calls the character ethic.
Okay, I love that we're starting with character because that feels way more substantial than just slapping on a surface level personality change.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful ways we can begin building that character is by understanding the idea of paradigms.
Covey says that paradigms are like the lens through which we see the world.
That makes me think about that famous optical illusion, the one where you can see either a young woman or an old woman in the same image.
It's like
Yeah.
the image itself doesn't change.
But our perception of it does.
That's a great analogy. Covey uses the same one.
He's saying that we don't see the world as it is, but as we are,
Right.
based on our own experiences, beliefs, and values.
So if our paradigms are faulty, it's like wearing the wrong prescription glasses, right? We're not seeing things clearly, and that's going to impact how we interact with the world.
Precisely. And that's where Covey contrasts the character ethic with what he calls the personality ethic.
He argues that many people are focused on outward techniques, quick fixes, charisma, those personality-based traits, thinking that's the key to success.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What's wrong with a little charm and charisma?
It's not that those things are bad.
They definitely have their place.
Right.
But Covey's point is that real, lasting change comes from within. It's about aligning your actions with solid principles.
Okay.
Imagine building a house.
You wouldn't start with the paint color, right?
Right.
You start with a strong foundation.
And that's what Covey means by building character.
I love that analogy. It makes total sense.
Okay.
How do we actually start building this character-based foundation?
Covey's book lays out 7 habits to cultivate.
And I'm ready to dive into the first one.
Let's do it. Habit number 1 is all about being proactive. And like we were saying before, this goes way deeper than just taking initiative.
Or being a go-getter.
What's the difference then?
What does it really mean to be proactive in the Covey sense?
It all comes down to choice. Proactive people are aware that they have the power to choose their response to whatever life throws at them.
They don't let their circumstances control their emotions or behaviors.
Okay.
They focus on their circle of influence.
The things they can actually do something about.
So instead of dwelling on things you can't control, like the weather or the traffic,
Right.
you focus on what you can influence.
Like your attitude.
Or your effort.
Exactly. Think of it this way. Imagine you're stressed about a presentation at work.
Okay.
You can't control whether your boss loves it or not.
But you can control how well you prepare.
Right. You can research, rehearse, and anticipate potential questions.
That's focusing your energy on your circle of influence.
That's such a practical way to think about it. So much of what we stress about is outside our control.
And Covey would challenge you to take it even further.
He suggests that you spend the next 30 days identifying moments where you could be more proactive.
Okay.
Pay attention to how you respond to challenges.
Are you letting your emotions run the show?
Or are you consciously choosing your response?
That's a powerful challenge, and I love how it pushes us to be more self-aware. Now that we're thinking about proactivity, let's move on to habit 2. Begin with the end in mind.
This one always makes me think of planning a vacation.
Okay.
You don't just hop on a plane, right?
Yeah.
You think about your destination and what you want to experience.
It's a great analogy, but Covey takes it a step further.
He wants you to imagine your own funeral.
Whoa.
I know it sounds a bit morbid.
Yeah, that took a turn.
Okay.
I'm intrigued. Where are we going with this?
It's about clarity. Imagine looking at the program at your funeral.
Seeing who's there,
Okay.
what do you want them to say about you?
What kind of impact did you have on their lives?
Thinking about this helps you clarify what truly matters most to you.
So you can live in alignment with those values.
Okay, I get it now. It's like having a North Star to guide your decisions.
It's about defining your own definition of success, right?
Exactly. It's about living with intention, not just drifting through life on autopilot. Covey believes that everything is created twice. First in the mind, then in reality.
Just like building a house, you need a blueprint before you start hammering nails.
Right.
And that's where your personal mission statement comes in.
So our personal mission statement is like that blueprint for our lives.
So that makes so much sense.
It's about defining your core values,
your unique contribution to the world.
your overall sense of purpose.
Okay.
When you have that clarity,
It's like having a compass that guides you towards the life you want to create.
it helps you figure out what are the big things in life.
And this is where the distinction between leadership and management comes in, right?
Covey talks about how leadership is about defining your destination,
Yes.
your true north.
While management is about effectively navigating the journey.
You got it. It's about having both vision and execution.
It reminds me of that quote. Management is doing things right.
Leadership is doing the right things.
I love that. So we've got our compass, our destination, our blueprint. But how do we make sure we're not just drifting along the way, getting bogged down by the day-to-day?
That's where habit 3 comes in. Put first things first.
Yeah.
This is where we move from planning to action.
From visualizing to actualizing.
And Covey gives us a fantastic tool for this, the time management matrix.
Okay.
You heard about this.
Okay, so this is where things get really practical. Tell me more about this matrix.
Imagine a grid with 4 quadrants.
Okay.
One axis represents urgency.
The other importance.
The goal is to spend as much time as possible in quadrant 2.
Those tasks that are important but not urgent.
Okay.
Think long-term goals,
Relationship building.
personal development,
Right.
all that good stuff that often gets pushed aside because it doesn't feel urgent in the moment.
It's so easy to get caught up in the tyranny of the urgent, those quadrant I tasks that feel like they're always on fire.
Absolutely. But if we're not intentional about prioritizing those quadrant 2 activities, we'll always be reacting to whatever comes up.
Instead of proactively designing our lives.
This is making me think about my own to-do list and how I prioritize tasks.
It's not about being rigid with our schedules, right?
Right.
It's about aligning our actions with our values and goals.
Exactly. Covey would tell you to identify your big rocks
Those important but not urgent activities.
and then schedule everything else around them.
And he actually walks the walk on this, right? Didn't he once turn down a big speaking engagement because it conflicted with a family vacation?
He did. And that story perfectly illustrates the point of habit 3. It's about making conscious choices that are in alignment with your values, even when it means saying no to something that seems like a good opportunity.
It's about having that bigger yes burning inside. When we're clear about our values and priorities, saying no to the good becomes easier because we have a more compelling yes driving our decisions.
Precisely. It's not about becoming a slave to your schedule, but about aligning your actions with your intentions.
This has been so insightful. We've laid the groundwork with those first 3 habits, the habits of private victory.
Being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, and putting first things first.
Now, I'm really curious to dive into the habits of public victory.
How do these principles play out in our interactions with others?
That's exactly where we're headed next.
These next 4 habits are all about building strong, effective relationships.
And it starts with a concept that might seem simple on the surface.
But as we'll see, it has profound implications. Think win-win.
All right, we're back and ready to tackle the habits of public victory.
Which is, you said.
All starts with habit 4. Think win-win.
Okay.
Now on the surface.
This one seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little cheesy.
But I have a feeling Covey goes way deeper than just...
Hey, let's all be nice and sing Kumbaya.
You're definitely right about that. Covey challenges us to examine the underlying paradigms that shape how we approach interactions with others.
He contrasts 2 mindsets. The scarcity mentality.
And the abundance mentality.
Okay, those sound pretty self-explanatory.
But can you break them down for me?
Sure.
Paint me a picture.
Imagine you're sharing a pizza with a friend, right?
Okay.
With the scarcity mentality.
You're eyeing up each slice.
Making sure you get at least half.
Right.
Maybe even scheming to get a bigger piece.
There's only so much to go around.
Right.
And if they get more, you get less.
It breeds competition
Yeah.
and this feeling of constantly having to protect your own interests.
Yeah, I've definitely encountered that kind of energy in competitive work environments. It's like people are more focused on getting ahead than on actually collaborating.
Exactly.
It creates a toxic dog-eat-dog atmosphere.
Yeah, imagine approaching that pizza with an abundance mentality.
Okay.
You're not so worried about the size of your slice
Mm.
because you believe there's plenty to go around.
Maybe you even offer to order another pizza so everyone can have their fill.
Right?
It's about collaboration.
Generosity.
And the belief that there are enough opportunities out there for everyone to thrive.
That sounds like a much more enjoyable way to live and work,
But how do we actually put this win-win thinking into practice?
especially when we're dealing with people who might be stuck in that scarcity mentality.
That's the real challenge, isn't it? And it's not always easy.
But Covey provides a practical framework, the win-win agreement.
Okay.
It's about getting everyone involved on the same page, about desired outcomes,
Guideline.
available resources.
Consequences.
So it's like setting clear expectations from the start.
Making sure everyone feels heard and understood.
Exactly. It's about finding creative solutions that genuinely benefit everyone involved,
Covey would tell you that it's not about compromise.
where everyone sacrifices something to reach a mediocre agreement. It's about finding that sweet spot where everyone walks away feeling like they gained something valuable.
That makes so much sense.
And it makes me think about how often we get stuck in those win-lose scenarios without even realizing it.
It happens all the time. Think about it. How often do we approach negotiations,
Right.
whether it's at work or even in our personal lives?
With the mindset of, I need to get my way.
It's so ingrained in our culture, right?
Like we're always trying to come out on top.
Right. But Covey challenges us to shift that paradigm.
He encourages us to see every interaction as an opportunity to create a win for everyone involved.
I love that. It's a subtle shift in mindset.
But it can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And it requires us to be really intentional about how we communicate and collaborate with others.
Speaking of communication,
Let's move on to habit 5. Seek first to understand.
then to be understood.
Right.
Now this one really resonates with me.
Because I know I can be quick to jump in with solutions.
Before truly listening to what the other person is saying.
It's so easy to do that, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're trying to be helpful.
But Covey would say that sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is simply listen.
And listen with empathy.
So what does empathic listening actually look like in practice?
Because it's more than just nodding your head and saying, uh-huh, right?
You got it.
It's about really trying to see the world through the other person's eyes,
To understand their feelings and perspectives.
even if they're vastly different from our own,
That can be challenging.
especially when someone is expressing something you don't agree with.
Or understand.
Absolutely. It requires us to quiet our own internal dialogue
To set aside our judgments and assumptions.
and to really tune into what the other person is trying to communicate,
Right.
both verbally and non-verbally. Covey talks about reflecting back what we hear them saying,
Not just parroting their words.
but capturing the essence of their message.
That makes sense. It's about showing them that you're truly listening.
That you're making an effort to understand their experience.
Exactly. And when people feel heard and understood,
Something amazing happens.
okay,
They feel safe to open up
to be vulnerable.
and to engage in more authentic communication,
It creates a foundation of trust and respect.
which is essential for any healthy relationship.
Exactly. Covey tells this great story about a father who's struggling to connect with his son.
Who's been having a hard time at school? The father keeps trying to offer advice and solutions.
But it's just pushing the son further away.
Finally, the father decides to just listen.
He stops interrupting.
He asks clarifying
He
questions,
reflects back what he hears his son saying.
and it completely changes the dynamic of their relationship.
I bet.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing we can do is just be present with someone and listen without judgment.
It's incredibly powerful.
And it often leads to much more effective solutions
yeah.
because everyone feels heard and respected.
This is making me realize how much I have to learn about being a better listener. It's definitely something I'm going to be working on.
It's a lifelong practice for sure. And it leads beautifully into habit 6, synergize.
Okay.
This habit builds on that foundation of understanding and respect.
Taking it to a whole new level.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I've heard synergy thrown around a lot.
But what does it really mean in the context of Covey's 7 habits?
It's about recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
When we approach interactions with a spirit of openness and collaboration,
We create something magical.
something that wouldn't be possible if we were all just operating in our own silos.
So it's more than just teamwork, right?
Right. It's about valuing differences.
About recognizing that everyone brings unique perspectives and talents to the table.
Okay.
When we embrace those differences,
When we're willing to challenge each other's thinking in a constructive way.
we open up a world of possibilities.
That makes me think about brainstorming sessions where everyone feels comfortable throwing out ideas.
Even the crazy ones?
Exactly. Covey talks about how important it is to create a safe space for creative exploration.
Where people feel free to take risks and share their ideas without fear of judgment.
And that kind of environment leads to innovation and those aha moments that can be so powerful.
It's about tapping into the collective wisdom of the group.
Covey uses the analogy of a choir.
Okay.
If everyone sang the same note.
It wouldn't be very interesting, would it?
Right.
It's the harmony
The blend of different voices.
that creates something truly beautiful.
That's such a great analogy.
And it reminds me of that saying, none of us is as smart as all of us.
Exactly. And synergy is all about tapping into that collective intelligence.
So we've talked about being proactive,
Beginning with the end in mind.
putting first things first,
Thinking win-win
seeking first to understand,
and synergizing.
which brings us to the final habit.
Habit 7, sharpen the saw. This feels like the perfect way to wrap up the other 6 habits.
Sharpening the saw
Right.
to make sure we can keep using all these incredible tools we've been talking about.
It's the habit that sustains all the others.
Think of it as self-renewal.
That continuous process of taking care of your most valuable asset, yourself.
And I'm guessing this goes beyond just getting enough sleep or treating ourselves to a spa day every now and then, right?
You're catching on. Covey talks about sharpening the saw in 4 key dimensions: physical, spiritual, mental, and social, emotional.
It's about taking a holistic approach to self-care.
Okay, I love that visual. 4 different blades on that saw, each one equally important. So, let's break it down. What does renewal look like in each of these areas?
Let's start with the physical.
Okay.
This one's about taking care of your body.
Eating nutritious foods, moving your body regularly,
Right.
and getting enough sleep. It sounds simple.
But so many of us neglect these basics.
It's true. We try to run on fumes and then wonder why we feel so drained and depleted.
Exactly. And it's not just about living longer or fitting into those skinny jeans.
Right.
It's about having the energy and vitality to show up fully in your life.
To pursue your goals with passion and enthusiasm.
So when we take care of our physical health,
It creates a ripple effect that impacts all the other areas of our lives.
precisely. Now let's talk about spiritual renewal. This one's a bit more personal.
But it's about connecting with your core values,
Your sense of purpose.
that deeper meaning that gives your life direction.
Okay.
For some people, it's about faith or religion.
For others, it's about spending time in nature, meditating, or engaging in creative pursuits.
It's about nurturing that inner spark, whatever that looks like for you.
Exactly. And then there's mental renewal. This one's about keeping your mind sharp
Challenging your thinking.
and expanding your knowledge base.
Okay.
It could be reading, taking courses, learning new skills,
Right.
or just having stimulating conversations that make you think about the world in new ways.
It's about staying curious and engaged throughout your life. So what about that 4th dimension? Social emotional.
This one's all about nurturing your relationships
Building connections with others.
and making a positive impact on the world around you.
It's about recognizing that we're social creatures who thrive on connection and contribution.
Exactly. And here's the important thing about these 4 dimensions. They're all interconnected.
When you neglect one area,
It impacts all the others.
it's like that old saying,
You can't pour from an empty cup
right?
if you're not taking care of yourself in all 4 dimensions.
You're not going to be much good to anyone else either.
Exactly. And that's why Covey encourages us to make it a daily practice to invest in all 4 dimensions.
He actually suggests scheduling at least an hour a day for this kind of self-renewal.
That might seem like a lot.
But when you think about how much time we waste on things that don't really matter,
It puts things in perspective.
it's about making yourself a priority.
Because when you invest in your own well-being
You're better equipped to handle challenges, build strong relationships.
and make a meaningful contribution to the world.
It's a win-win for everyone.
I love that. Now, before we wrap up this incredible deep dive into the 7 habits,
I'd love to hear your thoughts on what our listener can take away from all of this.
well, I think the biggest takeaway is that effectiveness
True, lasting effectiveness.
starts from within.
Okay.
It's about cultivating your character
Aligning your actions with your values.
and building a life that reflects your deepest aspirations.
It's about becoming the author of your own life story.
Exactly. And the 7 habits provide a powerful framework
A set of tools and principles.
to help you do just that.
It's a journey, not a destination.
And it all starts with a single step.
I'm reminded of the story Covey tells about a doctor who's treating a patient for burnout,
Okay.
along with recommending rest and relaxation.
The doctor gives the patient 4 prescriptions with instructions to open each one at a specific time during the day.
Okay, now I have to know what the prescription said.
The first one said,
Listen carefully.
the second one said,
Try reaching back.
the third one said,
Examine your motives.
and the fourth one said,
Write your worries on the sand.
wow, those are powerful.
I love how they encourage self-reflection and a shift in perspective.
They're about reminding us to slow down
To connect with ourselves.
and to tap into our own inner wisdom.
Okay.
Sometimes the most effective solutions are found not by pushing harder.
But by creating space for stillness and reflection.
So, as we close out this deep dive, if you could leave our listener with one final thought, one that might spark further reflection, what would it be?
Covey often talked about how our paradigms create our reality.
So I would ask,
Hmm.
what one shift in perspective could have the greatest positive impact on your life right now?
What a powerful question. It's an invitation to examine those limiting beliefs and assumptions that might be holding us back.
And to consider how we can choose a more empowering way of seeing ourselves and the world.
And remember,
You have the power to make that choice.
so much wisdom packed into these 7 habits. It's been such a pleasure diving deep into Covey's work with you.
The pleasure was all mine.